I've been driving rigs for a good 15 years now, mostly long hauls across the Midwest. You see a lot of strange stuff on the road, wrecks, people breaking down, the occasional drunk swerving across lanes. But there's one night that stuck with me, and to this day I can't tell it without my hands tightening on the wheel. It was about 2 in the morning in the middle of nowhere, Indiana. I was hauling refrigerated freight, which was a pretty normal routine. I remember being low on caffeine, so I pulled off at this rest stop. It wasn't one of the nice big ones with fast food, just a 2-lane exit with a handful of parking spaces, a bathroom shack, and a couple of soda machines that barely lit the lot. Now truckers will tell you that at that time of night those lots are either dead quiet or they've got 1 or 2 other rigs idling. But this one had a beat-up silver sedan parked up. No plates on the front, just a temporary tag taped in the back window. I noticed that right away because I don't like weird. I grabbed a Coke, stretched my legs, and figured I'd be back on the road in 5. As I'm walking back to my cab, I hear something. It wasn't loud, just this muffled thudding sound. I looked around and realized it was coming from the sedan. I froze mid-step. The sound came again, but heavier this time, like someone hitting the inside of a door with their fist. I thought maybe someone passed out in there and was just thrashing around, but as I got closer, I caught movement. There was someone in the back seat. They were moving like they were trying to sit up but couldn't. I don't know what made me do it, but I walked closer. The windows were fogged from the inside, and then all of a sudden I saw a face. A woman, eyes wide, mouth covered with tape, wrists bound in front of her. She was slamming her hands against the window, desperate. My stomach dropped so hard I swear it knocked the wind out of me. I spun around, scanning the lot, because if she was in that condition, whoever put her there couldn't be far. Then a guy steps out of the bathroom. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark hoodie. He notices me right away. No panic, no surprise, just this calm, steady stare like he'd already decided what he was going to do about me. He started walking toward me, hands in his hoodie pocket. Slow, deliberate, not a word. At that point, I had 2 choices. Either I confronted him or get the hell out. My gut told me he had a weapon. I froze where I stood for half a second too long, and before I knew it, he was close enough that I could hear the crunch of his boots on gravel. I finally snapped out of it and made a move back toward my truck. He changed his pace, then picked up just enough speed to make my pulse jump. Then he shouted, "Problem?" I didn't answer. I yanked open my cab door, scrambled inside, and slammed it shut. My hands fumbled with the lock, but I clicked it down just as he reached the step. He planted one hand on the door handle and tugged. Hard. The whole cab jolted, and I felt the weight of him outside my door. I shouted, "Back off!" but my voice cracked. He leaned closer to the glass, and that's when he slowly pulled one hand out of his hoodie pocket. I braced myself, certain he was pulling a weapon. Instead, he pulled out a set of keys dangled from his fingers. He gave them a little shake, like he was mocking me, then smiled. Then, calm as anything, he stepped down and walked back to the sedan. I was still locked up tight in my seat, heart pounding, watching him as he walked back to his car. Then he slid into the driver's side. The woman was still slamming her hands against the glass, eyes wide and wet, begging me without a sound. My whole body screamed at me to do something, pull my horn, swing my rig sideways, ram the car, something. But my arms felt dead. I couldn't move. The sedan backed out slowly. No rush, no panic. As he rolled past my headlights, her face pressed against the back window, breath fogging the glass, hands hammering. Then he was gone, just taillights shrinking into the dark. I sat there in silence for what felt like forever, then finally jammed the truck into gear and tore out of that lot. Drove 20 miles before I hit a bigger truck stop when I finally got a signal. I called the state police and spilled everything. The location, the description of the car, the guy, the woman. They told me they'd dispatch a unit. At that point, I was still in shock, so I closed up my rig and tried to get some sleep. Fast forward to 2 weeks later, I followed up with the police. I wanted to know if she was okay. The officer on the line sighed before answering. He told me they'd checked the rest stop, but the sedan was long gone. They canvassed nearby exits, pulled camera footage from gas stations along the highway, but nothing. It's like the car just vanished. No arrests, no recovered vehicle, no body, just gone. Even to this day, it eats me alive. I keep thinking, should I have hit the horn, blocked him in, If I'd just done something, maybe the cops would have had enough to get her back. Instead, the last time I saw her, she was pounding her fists against that window while he drove her off into the dark. That's what I live with every single night when I shut my eyes. I'm a police officer, and this was the time we got a 911 hang-up from a house where a 14-year-old girl was home alone. I was on patrol that night, and honestly, it felt like any other shift. A couple traffic stops, the usual noise complaints, even a drunk wandering down Main Street. Then I got a call from dispatch about a 911 hang-up at a house across town. There was no talking, just a few seconds of silence, then the line went dead. Those are tricky, as sometimes it's nothing, but sometimes it is. Either way, the policy states that someone has to check it out, so they sent it to me. The address was in a quiet part of town, a row of small single-family homes with trimmed lawns and cars in the driveways. When I pulled up, the house was dark. No porch light, no movement inside. At first glance, it looked empty. I walked up the steps, knocked, and called out, "Police department." No answer. I tried again, same thing. The air was still, no TV noise, no footsteps. I was just about to clear it when I noticed the door wasn't fully shut as the latch hadn't caught. It was just a little detail, but enough to make me stop. I eased the door open, announced myself again, and stepped inside. The living room was neat with a couch, coffee table, and a couple framed photos on the wall, but nothing out of place and no sign of anyone home. And then I heard a faint sound from the back of the house. It wasn't loud, more like a scrape against the floor followed by silence. I stopped in my tracks, listening. It came again, but lighter this time. I announced myself again. "Police, is anyone here?" But there was no answer. I started clearing the rooms one by one. I started off with the kitchen, but it was empty. I then moved to the dining room, which was also empty. Then I made my way through the hallway to the first bedroom. The door was open and I stepped inside. The bed was made with the blinds drawn as no one was there. Then I exited and made my way to another room nearby, but this door was locked. I knocked on the door and announced myself, but only silence answered. I waited for a while, then I heard a small sound coming from inside. I started to get a little nervous, so I had my hand on my holster. Then, as I reached for the doorknob, it started to turn from the inside. The door then cracked open and a man stepped out. He didn't panic. He wasn't surprised. He just looked at me like he'd been expecting someone. He was in his mid-30s, average height, wearing a dark green hoodie and jeans, barefooted with no socks or shoes. I asked if he lived there, and he said calmly, "Yes." I tilted my head a little and asked, "You didn't hear me calling out when I came in?" He gave a quick excuse. "Oh, I was in the back room with some music on, must have missed it." I nodded slowly, but it didn't sit right. "Well, here's the thing, I'm here because of a 911 hang-up that came from this address." This time he just shrugged and said, "Yeah, that was an accident." I must have dialed it without realizing. Now again, it didn't add up. Something about how he answered it was too fast, too casual. And again, he was barefoot. I'd seen shoes by the front door when I came in, a woman's running shoes, a girl's sneakers, but nothing that looked like his. Also on my way in, I noticed a few things that confirmed my suspicion. First, by the door was a coat hanger lined with small and medium jackets. Not one of them looked like it would ever fit him. Then in the sink, it was just one coffee mug with a faint lipstick stain on the rim. On the fridge, a school calendar covered in notes written in neat, girlish handwriting. Even the pictures on the wall only had a woman and a child smiling at the beach. Then a photo of birthday candles on a cake. There wasn't a single trace of a man living there. I asked him for an ID and he hesitated. He said he left it in his car. That was enough for me, as there were no cars parked in the driveway. I told him to sit down so I could figure out what was going on. Instead, he shifted his weight, glanced toward the back door, and I saw the muscles in his legs tighten like a runner waiting for the signal. My hand went for my holster, and I was getting ready to tell him to stay where he was, but before the words were out, he spun and sprinted towards the door. The back door slammed open so hard it hit the wall. He was already halfway across the yard before my boots even hit outside. I chased him, flashlight bouncing, shouting commands that he didn't even acknowledge. He vaulted the fence like he'd done it 100 times, and I barely cleared it behind him. We cut through 2 yards, the grass wet and slick underfoot. He was quick, moving like the fact that he was barefoot didn't bother him. I caught glimpses of that green hoodie under the streetlights just out of reach. He ducked through a side alley and I followed, heart pounding, lungs burning. When I caught up at the alley, he was gone. Just like that. The night swallowed him. I stopped, listening. Nothing but crickets and the faint hum of an air conditioner. I doubled back, retraced the path, hoping he'd made a mistake. Maybe he dropped something or left a trail. All I found was a section of chain-link fence rattling where he'd slipped over it. He knew where he was going. This wasn't some random panic run. It's like he rehearsed this 100 times. I was a little frustrated, but I headed back to the house. I did another sweep inside and searched the other bedroom. That's when I found her. A 14-year-old girl hiding in her closet, holding a phone to her chest with both hands. She was shaking so hard she couldn't even get a word out at first. I tried to calm her down, assuring her that she was safe. When she finally did, she told me her mom was working late. She'd been home alone when she heard someone moving around in the kitchen. She called 911 but stayed quiet as she didn't want the man to hear her. That's when she slid into the closet. She was so scared that she didn't come out, not even when she heard me in the house. She stated she thought it might have been him pretending. To be honest, I didn't even think of that. We sat in the living room while I waited for backup, and for that entire time, she never let go of that phone. When the other units showed up, we searched again. We went into the back bedroom where the guy came from. We found a backpack wedged behind the dresser and began to search it. What we found inside made my blood boil. There was duct tape, zip ties, gloves, and a knife. That's when it hit me. He hadn't broken into steal. He wasn't after the TV or jewelry. He was looking for her. Her mother pulled up an hour later, still in her work clothes. She didn't know whether to hug her daughter or collapse. And the truth is, I didn't know how to explain it to her in a way that wouldn't keep them both up at night. Unfortunately, the guy was never caught that night. Maybe he left town. Maybe he's still around. For weeks after, I couldn't shake the thought of what might have happened if she hadn't dialed 911 when she did. I couldn't shake the image of her clutching the phone like it was the only thing keeping her alive. We filed reports, canvassed the area, followed up on leads, but nothing solid ever came back. His face stuck in my head. He was calm, collected, like he'd done this before. I still drive past that street sometimes when I'm on patrol, same quiet houses, same trimmed lawns. But that one porch with the light burned out always makes me slow down, because I know that night wasn't about a burglary gone wrong. It was about a man who came for a kid and almost got away with it. And the fucked up part is that he's still out there, somewhere. I was 19 when I got my first car. It was an old Honda, scratched up and loud on cold mornings, but it meant I didn't have to beg rides from friends anymore. At the time, I was working closing shifts at a small diner on the edge of town. Most nights, I clocked out just before midnight. The roads were usually empty by then, just me and the occasional truck rumbling by. One night, I noticed a pair of headlights fall in behind me as I pulled out of the parking lot. Nothing unusual. I figured it was just another late-night driver. But when I made my first turn, the headlights turned too. I slowed down at the next intersection, and the car slowed with me. I told myself it was nothing, just coincidence. But the longer I drove, the more obvious it became. Every time I changed lanes, so did they. Every stop sign, every turn, always a few car lengths behind me. A pit formed in my stomach. I didn't want to risk going straight home, so I made a detour, taking a route I never used, which was long, looping back roads through the quieter part of town. The car stayed glued to me, their headlights washing across my mirrors like they wanted me to know they were there. By the time I reached the edge of a residential neighborhood, my hands were slick with sweat on the wheel. I pulled into a gas station, parked under the bright floodlights near the door, and cut the engine. I thought maybe the car would keep going, but it didn't. It turned in two. I froze, watching through the mirror as the dark sedan rolled slowly into the lot. It didn't park at a pump. Didn't go by the convenience store. It just stopped a few spaces back, engine still running, headlights pointed straight at me. I tried to act normal, grabbed my phone and walked into the store. My heart was thudding so hard I thought the clerk would notice. I bought a bottle of water I didn't need and lingered by the counter. Through the big glass windows, I saw the car still there, idling. No one got out. Minutes crawled by and another customer eventually pulled in. And as soon as they stepped out of their car, the sedan backed out, slow, deliberate, and rolled back onto the street. Relief hit me, but it was thin. Something in my gut told me not to go home. So I stayed at the counter, pretending to scroll my phone until I felt sure they were gone. Finally, I thanked the clerk and went back outside. The lot was empty. The road was quiet. I unlocked my car, slid into the driver's seat, and shut the door. My hands had just touched the wheel when I heard the slow sound of breathing coming from the back seat. That breath wasn't my imagination. It was too close, too human. My fingers hovered on the wheel, but I didn't move. If I moved too suddenly, he might lunge. My heart hammered so loudly I was sure he could hear it. Slowly, without jerking my head, I shifted my eyes to the rearview mirror. In the darkness of the back seat, something shifted. A shape, too large to be anything but a person, was hunched low. For a fraction of a second, I caught a pale glint. Eyes. He ducked down again, disappearing into the shadows. I nearly screamed, but nothing came out. My throat felt like it was locked shut. All I could think was, don't get out. If I opened the door now, I'd have to fumble with the handle, climb out, and that was too many chances for him to grab me. The only option was to move. My keys were still in my hand. My fingers trembled as I slid them into the ignition, praying he wouldn't hear the metallic click. The engine roared to life, and instantly I heard him shift, with fabric scraping, the soft bump of his shoulder against the seat. I slammed the gear into drive and floored it. The tires shrieked as I tore out of the lot, the sudden force slamming me back against the seat. Something in the back shifted with the momentum. For the next mile, it was just the sound of my engine screaming and the faint, steady rhythm of his breathing. I didn't dare look back. My hands clenched the wheel so tightly they ached, my whole body vibrating with adrenaline. I took turns too fast, blew through a stoplight, anything to keep moving forward. I couldn't think about what he was doing back there. I couldn't think about whether he had a weapon. If I thought about it too much, I'd freeze. Then I heard movement. I felt the back of the driver's seat press forward. He was leaning against it, slowly, testing me. I screamed and swerved hard across 2 lanes. Horns blared as another car shot past, but I didn't care. My eyes locked on the one place I knew he wouldn't follow me into, which was the police station. When I saw the floodlit building, I floored it. My tires screeched as I swung into the lot and skidded to a stop right in front of the glass doors. I leaned on the horn. My palm pressed so hard it hurt. Then the back door flew open. I caught a blur of movement in the corner of my eye as he bolted into the darkness, vanishing between buildings before the officers inside even stepped out. By the time they reached me, I was shaking so violently I couldn't even get words out. When they searched the car, they found the handle of a knife wedged under the back seat. The officer looked at me grimly. I didn't go home that night. And for months afterward, every time I got in a car, I checked the back seat twice, sometimes 3 times. Because once you've heard someone else breathing inside your locked car, you never forget it. This story happened in the summer with my friend Lucas. We went to Majorca for a week, more specifically to Magaluf, not to visit or do the typical tourist stuff. The goal was to simply party hard for the whole week. When we arrived, we each picked up the keys to our Airbnb. An important detail is that we weren't staying in the same apartment. I was on the ground floor while Lucas was on the first floor of the same building. On the first day, we walked around the neighborhood. Everything looked pretty normal except for one detail that made us feel a little uneasy right away. About 600 meters away, there was some kind of drug den, which was a shady area where the same sketchy figures always hung around. But we weren't going to let that ruin our vacation, so we decided to just ignore it. The first few nights went smoothly. We went out, hit bars and clubs, and came back early in the morning. The first night, everything was good. The second night, same thing. Third night, still the same vibe. Everything was fine as we were having fun and enjoying summer. Things started to get strange. Coming back alone to my apartment, I felt a very clear impression that I was being watched, almost like someone was following me in the shadows. I wasn't comfortable at all, and I ended up telling Lucas about it the next day. You have to understand, Lucas isn't the type to get intimidated. He's trained in several combat sports like wrestling, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and MMA. When it comes down to it, the guy is a machine. Because of that, I told myself even if someone tried to mess with us, we were covered. On the 5th night, we went out again, but this time something weird happened. A guy was standing outside the club and seemed to be watching us. Then on the way back, I thought I saw him again like he had followed us home. But at that point, I brushed it off as my imagination. It was on the 6th night that everything really took a turn. I was taking a shower when suddenly someone rang my doorbell. Without thinking and like an idiot, I opened the door. I didn't even have time to react before I got a massive kick straight to the stomach. The guy started yelling in Spanish, hurling insults. I was out of breath and I couldn't understand anything he was saying. He started threatening me, shouting money, money, non-stop, basically trying to rob me. But in the process, he woke up Lucas upstairs. A few seconds later, I heard the door upstairs slam open and Lucas came rushing down. The guy turned around and then the scene turned completely unreal. Lucas landed a clean right hook and the guy dropped instantly. But Lucas didn't stop there. Right away, he grabbed him and dragged him to the ground. He looked at me and said, "On 3, lift his legs." I had no clue what he was planning, but I trusted him. He counted 1, 2, 3. I lifted the guy's legs and with a quick move, Lucas locked in a perfect triangle choke. The guy struggled for a couple of seconds, then went out cold, completely knocked out, no fuss. We just stood there, breathing heavily, trying to process what had just happened. Unfortunately, we didn't even call the police right away. We just dragged him outside and left him on the sidewalk. When he woke up, he grabbed his stuff and stormed off, screaming insults. The next morning, we did go to the police to report the assault. The officers told us that it happens regularly in Magaluf. These guys spot partygoers who look like they have money, follow them quietly, and then attack at the first opportunity to rob them. The policeman said we were lucky as sometimes it ends really badly. In the end, we continued our vacation, but with a completely different atmosphere. We still had some fun, but that incident stuck with us. We had come to party, but instead we almost ended up in serious trouble. This story didn't traumatize me, but it taught me the importance of friendship. If Lucas hadn't been there, what could have happened to me?